It looks bloody awful. No way around it. And I cannot believe Sunak. I mean, it's fascinating to show what a bind Sunak is in. If Sunak had been in any form of a position of strength, he would immediately have gone, "You're an idiot, count sacked, no longer." But unfortunately, he is in such a weakened position. What fascinates me on a slightly more comedic level is, have you heard him being interviewed, this Craig Williams chap?
I did see. I did see him on the news. Yeah.
He I don't know about you, but over the last 5 years especially, the amount of times that Tories have been unable to comment on things because there is an ongoing official process and they wouldn't dream of interrupting, in this case, the gambling authority. It could be, the Partygate authority, or it could be literally anything that is being investigated. The Tories couldn't possibly comment on because they would hate to give any weight to either side in an independent inquiry. The man was Sunak's closest aide. 3 days before Sunak called a very surprise snap general election, he placed £100 bet on it. He should be sacked. End of story. I can't even believe we're still talking about it.
Let's move on while we still got time and talk about one more sort of election story after a fashion, which is the story of Craig Williams, former MP, and he's a candidate again this time. But more to the point, he's Rishi Sunak's parliamentary private secretary. He placed a bet on there being a July election shortly before the announcement of a July election. Mr. Williams, an unsurprisingly red-faced, red trouser and gilet-wearing gentleman, says that he's now being invested by the Gambling Commission, and he says, "I should have thought through how it looks." Alistair, how does it look?
It looks bloody awful. No way around it. And I cannot believe Sunak. I mean, it's fascinating to show what a bind Sunak is in. If Sunak had been in any form of a position of strength, he would immediately have gone, "You're an idiot, sacked, no longer." But unfortunately, he is in such a weakened position. What fascinates me on a slightly more comedic level is, have you heard him being interviewed, this Craig Williams chap?
I did see him on the news. Yeah.
I don't know about you, but over the last 5 years especially, the amount of times that Tories have been unable to comment on things because there is an ongoing official process and they wouldn't dream of interrupting, in this case, the gambling authority. It could be, the Partygate authority, or it could be literally anything that is being investigated. The Tories couldn't possibly comment on because they would hate to give any weight to either side in an independent inquiry. The man was Sunak's closest aide. 3 days before Sunak called a very surprise snap general election, he placed £100 bet on it. He should be sacked. End of story. I can't even believe we're still talking about it.
I think he should get together with the man suing Apple and form an association of men with no self-awareness.
Sort of class action of sort. We were talking politics earlier. Let's go back and do a little bit more politics. Reform has for the first time polled ahead of the Conservatives, only very slightly, 1 point ahead in one poll, but it has, as they say, put the cat amongst the pigeons. Simultaneously, there's been quite a lot of stuff about Reform candidates saying or thinking dodgy things, such as we should have been neutral against Hitler, for example, and also 1 in 10 of them appear to be Facebook friends with an actual fascist black shirt. Nigel Farage says he doesn't care, it's too late to get them off the ballot paper, and they're just normal people, and this is all happening because they didn't go to Eton. Alistair, go.
Oh, God. Just take some responsibility for a start. I don't want to talk about Farage because, frankly, he just gets so much. I mean, we have to, but he gets so much publicity. I was in the car yesterday, literally turned on the radio, and the news said Nigel Farage has declared himself leader of the opposition and needs to debate Starmer. And you don't need to make that the first item on the news.
I think you'll notice I'm making it the 7th item of our news discussion.
and I'm very grateful for that. I mean, this is the problem is, I mean, him declaring himself the opposition, I could declare myself the second coming. It doesn't make it true. And he is an agent provocateur. He's a bad actor. And this is a man, I mean, this is a great example is actually this thing about, turns out 1 in 10 Reform candidates are friends with the guy who's basically trying to reinvigorate Oswald Mosley.
He's a literal black shirt. Yeah.
That is what he's trying to do. And literally, what's Farage's response on LBC? "I apologise that not all of our candidates have been to Eton." That's not the point. Added to which, Eton, I don't know if you've noticed, isn't that popular a backstory these days either. And then he goes on about the London elite. And you go, mate, you went to Dulwich College, you worked in the city, and you now have basically a grace and favour apartment paid for by your backers in Chelsea. You're as much London elite as anyone else. And you were literally on record last year of saying you didn't want to spend Friday afternoons in Clacton.
Yeah.
So I find the whole thing, obviously you have to give him a certain amount of coverage, but all he does is he is a media darling. If he has ever actually nailed down on policy, there's a great James O'Brien interview with him. There's that Irish girl interviewing him about the Ra thing. If you fact check almost any one of his speeches, he just has nowhere to go.
All of that being true, he does lead a party that has just polled against the party ahead of the party that is actually in government, and on no world is that not a story.
That is very much a story. I have a slight feeling Nadeem Zahawi is getting his own back, with YouGov being the only polling company to get him a point ahead. I think it is a fascinating story on many levels, but treating him as a sort of the sort of demand that he be treated as leader of the opposition is classic Farage. And I do think our Facebook mates we send each other things on Facebook. Do you know what? I don't send people fascist stuff on Facebook, and if a tenth of my friends did, I'd think I'd have something to worry about.
Well, well said and fair enough. Viv, the fact that Reform do appear to be polling so well, which it's very hard to navigate these things, even how to talk about them, because they're polling so well, despite the way that they've only got one or at best 1.5 candidates that anyone's ever heard of. They've got no policies to speak of. They're a sort of belligerent, none of the above vote that their only real political identity is based around sort of immigration, really. And yet they're up against these parties with these huge manifestos that, whether they're nonsense or not, are at least huge and are at least comprehensive. And yet that is what a decent chunk of people seem to want.
So much going on here. You know, people are desperate for entertainment, and the more Farage appears on the news agenda, the more desperate they become for the entertainment to get away from him, and yet he then is the entertainment. You know, we've seen this all before a million times with so many characters across history, not least of all Trump, and we always fall for it. You know, the media is really guilty here. You look at this YouGov poll, and yes, you know, Reform leads 19% to 18% in the Conservative, the right-wing vote. Labour 37%. Lib Dems up 4 points to 14%.
Yep.
Now, that's not a story. Why is that not a story? Up 4 points.
It's not a story.
Green on 7%.
It's not a story because it's not new, because they're always there. The Lib Dems are always between 10 and 20%,
well,
and no matter how many trampolines they jump off.
An increase of 4% is interesting, but in the news cycle and in political punditry, the Farage story is interesting because it's about the Conservatives. And this is really about the Conservatives imploding. They caused this situation. This started with Brexit. You know, this all stems, you know, cameras on the front page of the Times today saying don't vote Reform. He started all this because of his hubris in encouraging the Brexit vote, taking that gamble. You know, you've got Macron taking a similar gamble again now. This is all really about the Conservatives and their absolute dominance by opportunists and not by people who have any integrity or any real ideology even. I respect people who have a genuine ideology and give their lives up to public service to defend it. These people don't. Farage is just another opportunist. I spent a miserable morning researching the new British Union, the
why would you do this?
New British, to which 1 in 10 on Facebook they're linked with these Reform candidates.
And have you discovered they've actually got some good stuff?
It is astonishing. Like, literally, the front page of their website has a sign saying, "For Britain we march, black shirts, you must be willing to sacrifice."
Jesus.
And they have a whole section on women and gender, which is literally taken from The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, and says men must be men, women must be women, homosexuality can be tolerated, but it must not be promoted. I wonder what that means. It talks about abortion and how women are being forced to have abortions that they don't want. It talks about adultery and how we must have laws against adultery.
This is the point.
This is absolutely chilling.
This is news. It's not nothing when 1 in 10 of a political party's candidates are embracing, are affiliated, are embracing that sort of
to
content.
an ideology so extreme that it cannot be a registered political party.
Yeah. Anyway,
But that
and you can't tackle that without covering it. But if you do cover it, you boost it. It's the eternal dilemma.